Hey folks, MasakoX here. Hope you're having a really nice Christmas Eve. I thought that Hav and I should drop in on you and give some more Dragon Ball content. Just in case if you're bored or if you're in transit and you're looking for something to watch. So, a couple of days ago, as of writing this video, Takao Koyama, that's the guy who loves the OG Broly a little too much, that is healthy, and is also a prominent producer and screenwriter on a lot of the DBZ movies, other than Broly obviously, stirred the pot recently. We'll leave a link to what he said on Twitter for full context, but the meat and potatoes of the material was that of the strongest Majin Buu. What form was it? Once again. Koyama-san, I know you mean well to clear things up, but this is the internet. Stirring of pots is not always a good idea. Unless it's an Uncle Roger video. Yes, if you look through the subsequent tweets, I think he realized that after getting bombarded with questions and replies not in his native language. Oh dear. But yes, needless to say, and outside of that particular thread, this caused a massive discussion within the general fandom. Though, realistically, this is something that has been discussed on and off in the fandom for years now, and Geekdom's actually explained this in detail in his recent video, which is a follow-up to his Majin Buu form guide from a few years prior. So we won't be talking about that specifically, as we feel that it's been explained pretty well already. And also, if you checked out our manga video from last week, Buutenks in that is actually considered the strongest by Toriyama himself, since he's the guy who made the original story, so I think he actually holds some sort of credit. Buhan or Buutenks, really it depends which medium you appreciate the most. So instead, to make things a little more personal, let's focus on the second part of Koyama's tweet about his favourite Majin Buu, and rank all the transformations of the infamous pink blob. Which is the best, which is the worst. And we say all, but what we really mean is, we will rank all the anime ones, since there are some of them that appear only in the games, such as the fusion of Vegeta and Buu, yeah, in the old Budokai games. And sometimes forms differ but only in minor detail, which is, as Vegeta would say in the Big Green Double Movie 9, not worth watching. We are going to rank them in the order of their appearance, and give them a subjective score from both Haverock and myself, with a rating guide of something that would be appropriate of scoring them. Cool? Cool. Innocent Buu, or Good Buu, or Mr. Buu. Whichever you like really, they're basically the same. This look is the first Buu we ever saw, the one to establish ourselves with in terms of the greatest and most terrifying menace to the universe, and is the one that is, arguably, the most recurring, as it is technically rocked by 2 incarnations of the characters. 3 if you count the expanded materials. Long story short, even when we first laid eyes on this thing many years ago, we knew that we were in for a ride. Especially when you remember that Toriyama likes to subvert expectations a lot of the time with his readers. Very much so back in his heyday, for somewhat malicious purposes sometimes. With the design more akin to something from the original Dragon Ball, and its impish behaviour, we knew that this was going to be a rather special opponent. Especially when we discovered how powerful this thing really was. The best thing about Innocent Buu was that, as an archetype for a villain, it doesn't outstay its welcome. The first instance of Buu didn't linger for a very long time, relatively speaking. If we had an entire saga of fighting this particular look, we wouldn't be so sure if that would be a good decision or not, or whether we'd be actually still sane. But luckily that's not the case. Buu got the message across that this was not your average bad guy, and that there would be plenty of questions and intrigue behind him yet to come. Also, he works much better as a heroic or at least non-evil character, and he manages to turn Hercule into a much more bearable character, so that's a big plus. Without Buu, Hercule probably wouldn't have made that final push into being an endearing yet loudmouth aide to the Dragon team, somehow. The biggest downside of this form though, isn't really its fault. It's really connected to his later incarnations. You see, this is when most of the Buu gimmicks were presented to us, and the later forms rarely go beyond from what we had seen with this one, or any other DBZ villains actually. So it all felt after Buu, the first one, a little bit repetitive. But as a solo character, yeah, he's a classic. You can't fault this one for the sins of his, sons? Variations? Splits? Anyway, I personally give this a 3.5 Dabura cookies out of 5, whereas Haverock would give him 4. And yes, we're rating him out of Dabura cookies. Deal with it. The next one to grace our screen was Evil Buu. One of, if not the most underrated forms of Majin Buu. This one was with us for even less time than the original Buu. As a reminder to you all as to when it shows up, it forms when innocent Buu expels all evil from his body after being furious at Van Zant after he had hurt his new best friends Bee and Hercule. And quite rightly too, I say. As we would all agree, aside from Spopovich, Van Zant is the biggest jerk the franchise has ever seen. He's got nothing good for him, right? Boo's evil half, understandably, destroys the gunman, absolutely dominating his original version in a battle. After that, he turns good Buu into chocolate and, well, the rest is history. We always liked this Buu. It was a perfect blend of goofy and creepy, and we feel that we haven't seen enough of this one. It has its own unique color palette too, a rather interesting silhouette, and could be rather menacing when you have the fact that he barely speaks. Taciturn villains are always very good. That mysterious, unsettling feeling that really encapsulates evil Buu really well. Its biggest downfall is, yet again, that we only see him really briefly, and it doesn't have a real comeback in any shape or form again. No pun intended. And we wish he would, because this might be the most unique form of the pink blob monstrosity that we've got. In fact, he's not even pink. He's kind of this greyish brown. Not quite Super Buu territory though, but not innocent Buu anymore, with its own special spin. I personally give it a 4.5 Dabura cookies out of 5, whereas Havrok gives 3.5. Then there is the one that we would most describe as the definitive version of the pink genie. The one that a lot of people assume is the main iteration, Super Buu. This is what you get when the good side becomes the recessive aspect of your character, whereas Mr. Buu was the opposite. When that part of you withdraws into itself, the good part, and all the evil sentiments are on the outside. Super Buu might be the most effective form of the monster we know and love today. Yes, it's true that this particular form basically does the same things that Innocent Buu did, but personality-wise and the way it does those things, it's a nice turn into something more sinister. He can still be goofy though. That's still Buu's overall personality no matter what amount of good and evil you have going. And he gets used to his slapstick medium while falling asleep or fighting Gotenks. The amount of silly faces he does during the entire fight with Gotenks tops probably the entire series. And the very rubbery quality of his particular form makes the mentioned repetitiveness of the particular Buu forms not that apparent yet. It's still relatively fresh. There is just enough differentiation between this version and the first one to make him stand out still. You remember what Super Buu did, and how he carried himself in his more chaotic evil framework, whereas with Mr. Buu, he's more like chaotic neutral? Debatable, I would say. Also, and quite simply, Buff Boy Buu is just a solid bad guy, through and through. And it's a shame that fighting games overlook him really often. Like, if you can only have good Buu and one evil one in a roster for a fighting game, it's usually not Super Buu that gets to carry the torch of the evil one, join Mr. Buu in the lineup. And that's a shame. The biggest issue we have with him though, well, after he started absorbing everyone, he really stopped being that fun and started to show certain instances of being overused. But let's not get ahead of ourselves just yet. I give him 4 Dabura cookies, whereas Havrok would give him 4.5. Now here is when things start to get into the bit of the deja vu valley for us. This is the second iteration of Super Buu, Gotenks and Piccolo having been absorbed, aka Buutenks. Look, Buu here has a vest now! But there's more to it though. He's got a longer thing on his head and nose, yay! He can breathe like he's people! Not like Krillin anymore, who we all consider here on this channel an earthworm because, according to Toriyama, he can breathe through his skin apparently. I'm not joking, he actually said that. And as much as there are some cool tweaks to the design, this form is really short-lived as the fusion breaks within him relatively quickly. Yes, he does have a major power boost, but in the grand scheme of things, we don't see that much of it really to warrant much merit. But like we say, it should be mentioned somehow because, according to Toriyama in the original manga, this version of Buu is the strongest out of all of them, which sort of does make sense when it's Gotenks you absorbed, second only to Goku Super Saiyan 3. But again, the fusion breaks, so it's not sustained in that leap of power, or at least not as efficiently. Also, he's now smart and more eloquent, but in a way that's a bad thing, because it kind of takes a lot of his charm away from his personality. It just turns him into something that reminds us an awful lot of Perfect Cell and the way he carried himself in conversation. And if you've been watching Dragon Ball, Cell had been around not that long ago, so it was still relatively fresh. And like we mentioned just now, Buu cannot maintain this form for very long. It's not the fondest of Buu moments really, despite the tremendous power. I give him 2.5 cookies, and Haverock does as well. I went to the third Super Buu to introduce himself to us. Piccolo, Goten and Trunks absorbed, so defused Gotenks. There are many reasons why this form would be higher up in the ranks than Buutenks, and we could talk for hours and give you a lot of elaborate details as to why we think what we think. It's because of the cape, isn't it? Capes are cool. This is also one of the more cunning forms that we have for Buu, as he is the one able to trick Ultimate Gohan into his body. But to be fair, that's not exactly hard, because Gohan was kind of asking for it at the time because of his overconfidence. Buuccolo, I think, played on that, having Piccolo inside of him, stop it, and figuring out how Gohan would possibly act. Again, the whole smart Buu form kind of takes away a lot from his charm. But this one is not the biggest offender in that category, and we will soon see why. Also, just as a side note here, in the manga, we can briefly see how he would look like if he only had absorbed Piccolo and not the two boys. So yeah, capes make him slightly cooler. Both of us give him a rating of 3 Dabura cookies out of 5. Now here's the last Super Buu, we promise. Gohan absorbed, aka Buuhan. Oh, here come the stands. Hey, don't think that we hate this one, okay? There was a lot of potential in this version of Super Buu. The ultimate version in some eyes. This one could have been the coolest Buu form, you know? After all, he has pretty much the entire dragon team within his collective, save for the Saiyans, and could utilize all of it quite aptly. But not only does he serve as a grim reminder of how robbed Gohan was of his character arc in the saga, but he's also over-designed, complicated, really. He became Cell 2.0, definitely here. Buutenks and Buuccolo were like this too, but Buuhan, yeah, he pretty much confirmed the Cell clone status. With his face, his mannerisms, he started a long story of characters having perfect Cell facial features in their ultimate forms. We're looking at you, Moro. Although, should we say that Cell started that? This most likely is the strongest form of Buu, if you go off of the anime and Koyama-san's comments. But at the point of his appearance, we are already kinda tired of this constant back and forth. Also, I'm not sure if the shirt goes well with the pants. He does remove it at one point though. He should be the coolest, but he really isn't. And kinda seems symptomatic of what's wrong with the Buu saga, really. So yeah, we both give him 2 cookies out of 5. The shortest appearance goes to huge Majin Buu. Wait, you could call that a form? Well, yeah, it was, but a very, very short-lived one. Makes Evil Buu look like an opus. Although this is more an in-between version that happened when absorbing South Supreme Kai, this is listed as an actual form in many different guides. This is an unreasonably buff Buu. Yeah, 1 cookie out of 5. Then there's the last form that we see in Dragon Ball Z, the one that fighters just can't get enough of. Pure Majin Buu, aka Kid Buu, the purest, the most chaotic, and the most savage form of the evil gene. I can understand why, narratively speaking, that this is the most compelling version of the genie. After all, this is the version that Bibidi controlled, the original Majin Buu, when he went on his first little foray millions of years ago into the stars, wanting total domination and control. Kid Buu, beloved by the makers of video games, I mean obviously, as he's usually the Buu that gets into the roster the most often. The biggest thing about that is that makes this one so interesting, is his unpredictable personality, the lack of communication, aside from grunts and cackles and laugh, and the amount of destruction that is in his wake. This thing seems totally unstoppable, despite being slightly weaker than Buuhan in terms of overall strength, and even manages to shortly relive the excitement over the villain, as he has one truly excellent battle with Goku. Still, it can give you some examples of Dijon mustard. It's still a Buu after all. There are only a select few things you can do with this particular framework. Also, the whole small posture gimmick would have been surprising if first and final form Frieza hadn't been a thing. I get it, that the final opponent of Z kinda has to have the traits of all of the previous big bads, but still, he's still the least favorite out of the 3 big ones. You know, Cell, Frieza, Buu. He's not as unique, though that's not all his fault really, with him being the 3rd of 3. Again, he might not be the most powerful of Buus, the debate still lives on, which makes him unique in a sense that as a final opponent, he doesn't possess the biggest power. But his savagery causes us to ignore that fact. He's not a bad form, he just came into the story too late, at least in our opinion. Both of us give him 3.5 cookies out of 5. But wait, there's one more to consider, and this comes from Super. Good Buu, shape up form. Haven't I felt that we should drop this one in here for your consideration? If this didn't actually turn out to be a fake out, this would have had 5 Dabura cookies for us. To us, this form is perfect. Seriously, it was so nice to see Buu train and being a badass whilst training with Goku. It did work surprisingly well, even with his friendly face. It actually sort of made it all the more endearing, and it made us feel a little bit uncanny. Also, we know, we're cheating as this really isn't a transformation as much as a Buu state of being. Well, fit. But since he did get an increase in power because of this, and he was rocking a new look, you know, we're willing to let that slide. We were really excited about this, and in an ironic twist, Super had repeated the biggest lesson that we, as a fandom, learned from the Buu saga. The fact that something is subversive doesn't automatically make that a good thing. Both of us give him 4 cookies out of 5. It would have been 5 again, but, you know, fake out. But we do have a soft spot for the guy. So here we are. These are all the anime Buu forms rated. We were thinking about including Majin Buu from GT, but he's his own thing, really. But still, we hope that you enjoyed our little adventure with the pink and one grey blob, and we'd love to hear which one is your favourite. Also, do you agree with Buhan being the strongest, or do you think it's Buutenks? Or are you Team Kid Buu? Leave a comment below, and let's get this discussion going. And I will see you in the next video. Catch you later!